I want to do what I can in these few moments to address our theme, a blueprint for the future, a blueprint for the future. And I'm going to come at the theme like this, a blueprint for the future, learning to hustle like Nipsey. A blueprint for the future, learning to hustle like Nipsey. Nipsey Hussle has made his triumphant transition via tragedy as he made his exit from earth to eternity. But Nipsey Hussle has left a lofty legacy that we all can learn from as we attempt to follow a blueprint of possibilities into a brighter and better day. Of course, Nipsey Hussle warns all of us prophetically. As the philosopher, poet from the pavement, Nipsey Hussle, that sage from the streets in South Central Los Angeles, has these words that warn each and every one of us as we assemble in this ballroom. And I share these words with you. Check out what Nipsey says to each and every one of us. Nipsey speaks of a young black brother who is trapped, but he can't change it. He goes on to suggest that he knows he's a genius, but he can't claim it because there are no platforms for him to embrace it. And then he wraps it up by talking about he becomes frustrated, and so therefore he is faded. Permit me to explicate and exegete what Nipsey Hussle is talking about. Nipsey Hussle speaks of a brother, watch this, who is gifted with genius. He knows he is gifted with genius, but he is trapped and he cannot change it. Of course, we recognize that the word trapped, when you look up Urban Dictionary, is reference to the fact that on one level, the young brother gifted with genius finds himself, here it is, trapped in an economic situation that precludes his possibilities. And so as a consequence, he is trapped, but he can't change it. He knows he's a genius, but he can't claim it. And what we are suggesting as we gather in this banquet area, that a blueprint for the future recognizes the traps that too many of our young African-American men find themselves in. Trapped. I think I can quote Jay-Z. After all, you have the nerve to use as your theme a blueprint for the future. And Jay-Z's sixth album, what, has everything to do with the blueprint. That's the name of Jay's album for those of you who are not hip-hop savvy. And in that particular album, check out what Jay-Z says. He says, Mama raised me, but Daddy left me. God help me to forgive you. I still have issues. I understand that because there is Jay-Z testifying that one of the traps that young black brothers experience in too many instances is a Jay experience, and that is the exit of Pops in his life. And as a consequence, Jay testified that he was imprisoned by his own internal issues. And so with that being the case, that's one of the traps that young black brothers experience. I'm not done. There's another trap. There's the trap, watch this, where young black men in these disunited states of America find themselves repeatedly, and please don't miss this, criminalized and demonized. No wonder Oprah Winfrey sagaciously suggested that to be black and male in these disunited states of America is to find yourself criminalized, yes, criminalized and demonized. That's what young black brothers find themselves trapped in. And that's why Paul Butler wrote a classic, I believe, that came out last year entitled Chokehold. Chokehold, of course, is a metaphor that he borrowed from the existential tragedy experienced by a brother there on Staten Island in New York when he declared, I can't breathe, and yet Eric Garner is dead today because of a chokehold. That's the metaphor that Paul Butler uses to explicate. Watch this, what goes on with young black brothers in this nation. Young black brothers are in a chokehold. Why? Because judges and politicians and police officers and people in general have so criminalized and demonized young black men that they are afraid of young black men. And so black men are trapped, here it is, on one level by internal issues, often because daddy has disappeared. But then Paul Butler says young black men have to deal with the chokehold, the metaphor that speaks of a justice system that is criminal and unjust, and as a consequence of police misconduct and an unjust criminal justice system, mass incarceration has fed our prisons for profit. I'm coming for you, because not only do young black men get trapped by internal issues and a chokehold, but further, I've discovered they get trapped, don't miss this, by dis and miseducation. Dis and miseducation. I'll illustrate it with Nipsey. Have you thought about the tragedy that Nipsey Hussle, for all of his genius, Nipsey Hussle, for all of his smarts, he was so smart, he took pieces and put together, he built a computer, and yet he dropped out of school. It's not that he failed school, but the school system failed him. I'll illustrate it like this. It failed him because instead of educating, we in America have engaged in training our children. There's a big difference between education and training. You see, training is what you do an animal for your own benefit and profit. Education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to call out of you what is already in you. And Nipsey, watch this, found himself in a school where he was being trained and not educated. Speak, Frederick Haynes, I'm about to do that. Check this out. I saw a cartoon that blew my mind. The cartoon illustrated the problem with American education. In the cartoon, there was a monkey, an elephant, as well as a fish and a bird. And the proctor who was given the standardized test said, please give an essay as to how you climb a tree. I think you already know the monkey had an advantage. The others did not have an advantage. Why? Because the standardized test was based on training and not education. And that's why, my sisters and brothers, it is essential that we recognize the need for the 100 black men, because too many of our young brothers are trapped, to use the language of Nipsey Hussle. They are trapped because they're incarcerated by internal issues. They are trapped because of dis and miseducation. They are trapped because they've been criminalized and demonized. But here is the good news. We have gathered in this space to talk about a blueprint for the future. And I want to declare, if we hustle like Nipsey, we can rewrite the future and do much better. I'll see if I can help you, because you're not feeling me yet. Did you hear about that plane over in Europe? It was a British Airways flight. Don't miss it. It's going to blow your mind. A British Airways flight that was bound, that was destined to go to Dusseldorf, Germany, instead ended up 525 miles away, not in Dusseldorf, Germany, but instead it ended up in Scotland. Why? It went in the opposite direction because it was given, here's your shout, the wrong flight plan. And whenever you are given the wrong flight plan, there is no way you can end up in the right place. And I'm simply suggesting, when I list the internal issues that incarcerate our young brothers, when I think about the criminalization and demonization of black males, when I think about the diseducation and miseducation of black males, all I can say is they've been given the wrong flight plan. And here we are tonight as members of 100 Black Men of America, specifically family in Omaha. And our challenge, my challenge to each and every one of us, is to make sure that every one of our young black brothers get the right flight plan. Because if they get the right flight plan, they can make this world what it should be. You're not feeling me? I'll help you out right quick. How does it happen? It happens through the power of mentoring. I'll illustrate this. The greatest fighter in the history of boxing, as far as I'm concerned, is Muhammad Ali. He would float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. No one could do it like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was so cold because he not only fought in the ring, but he fought for his people outside of the ring. But check out how Ali got into boxing. Ali got into boxing because at the age of 12, I'm about to shout you, he's 12 years old. He's just been given a bicycle by his parents. He rides his bike to a store, comes out of the store after shopping, and discovers that his bike has been stolen. He stands there weeping bitter tears, and Joe Martin, a police officer, comes along and says, "What's wrong?" He says, "Somebody stole my bike, and if I find him, I'm going to whoop him." And Joe Martin said, "Do you know how to fight?" "I don't know how to fight, but I will whoop him anyway." And that's when he told young Cassius Clay, "Well, there's a boxing gym right here. Come over to this boxing gym, because if you're going to whoop somebody, you need to know how to fight." Y'all know history now, because Ali became the greatest of all time. Why? Because Ali had someone to give him a flight plan that went in the right direction. Y'all call it a blueprint. And that is the challenge of us tonight, to make sure that every young black brother gets the right flight plan, so that when they dream of going to Dusseldorf, they will not end up in Edinburgh. I got to give it to you like this. It works like this, and I'm almost done. It works to begin with, and I love this point right here, and that those of us in this room can write a blueprint for the future if we recognize once God blesses you to overcome, you have a responsibility to help the rest to come on over. I'm going to do that one more time, because that was a shout bomb right there. If we were in church, somebody would shout, "When God blesses you to overcome, you have a responsibility to help the rest to come on over." I'll unpack that right quick. Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor said that there are those of us who were born above what he called the scratch line. When you're born above the scratch line, it has nothing to do with your genius before you got here. It has everything to do that you were born into privilege. And Dr. Proctor said, "I was born above the scratch line with parents who insisted on me getting an education just as they had gotten an education. But because I was born above the scratch line, I could not just enjoy my time above the scratch line. I had to go beneath the scratch line and use my gifts and talents to be a blessing to those who were born beneath that scratch line." There are many people in here, watch this, who go to church. I'll see if I can shout you right quick. Have you thought about the fact that Jesus Christ, our sable-skinned Savior from the streets, our caramel-colored Christ, who was straight out of the hood in Nazareth, and yet Jesus, watch this, at the beginning of his ministry is in the wilderness, and there in the wilderness, here comes your shout, Jesus fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. Here comes the devil, and the devil says, "Yo, G, if you're the Son of God, why don't you turn these stones into hot water cornbread?" And Jesus said, "No, I am a real man. I don't have to satisfy my appetite using my power in order to be a man. I recognize that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God." But let's fast forward now to chapter 14, because in that same book, he's in the wilderness again, but this time there's a multitude, 5,000 men, not to mention the women and children. And look what happens. The disciples say, "Yo, G, listen, it's getting late, and you got to send these folk home because they're getting hangry." And Jesus says, "No, we gonna feed them. What do we have? We got 2 pieces and 5 biscuits. That's that's all I need. He takes a 2-piece and 5 biscuits and he fed the multitude. Notice he did not use his power to feed himself, but he did use his power to feed the community. And that is our responsibility. And that is when God blesses you with power, that power ain't about you. It's about what God does through you to be a blessing to people that may never be able to pay you back. You still get it. You still, I got you now. I got you now. We celebrate the drum major for justice, Martin Luther King Jr. But every January when you celebrate Dr. King, don't forget that Dr. King was born into a middle-class family. And yet when he died standing with striking sanitation workers who were impoverished. He died preparing and organizing the Poor People's Campaign because he recognized that when God blesses you to be middle class or upper class and you don't help those who are underclass, God may one day say, class dismissed. Boom. You didn't like that, did you? I got to give you something else. And so in this blueprint, if you're blessed to overcome, reach back and help the rest to come on over. But also in this blueprint, I love this part right here. Make sure you recognize that every blueprint implies construction. And construction is always messy and dirty, but construction has a vision that gives you the energy to keep on keeping on. I didn't come through clear. Let me make it real clear. When you engage in the process of mentoring, mentoring implies construction. Construction, watch this, conforms to a blueprint, and that blueprint is connected to a vision. Y'all missed your shout. I'll help you out right here. I think it's Andrew Carnegie in How to Win Friends and Influence People who throws down the truth like this. Check out what he says. He says that mentoring is just like mining for gold. But when you mine for gold, you're going to come through a whole lot of dirt. But don't you give up because you go through a lot of dirt, because your focus ain't on the dirt. Your focus is on the gold. And that's what I say to everyone engaged in mentoring in this space. Oh yeah, the gold is there, but to get to the gold, you have to go through some dirt. But don't you get all beside yourself and uppity, because all of us got some dirt in us. And you would not be where you are today had someone not looked beyond your dirt to mine your gold. And so Andrew Carnegie reminds all of us of the importance of mining for gold. Let me switch metaphors now and get back to construction, because in construction I've discovered signs that illustrate what construction is like. I'm flying out of New York LaGuardia a few weeks ago, and Mr. President, check out what a construction sign said. It said, excuse me, but we're changing. You'll catch that later on. I saw another sign in Dallas, Fort Worth, and this sign said, excuse us, but we are reimagining what this Admirals Club can look like in the new year. You're still missing your shout. The shout is that when people are under construction, yes, they're going through changes. It's dirty, it's messy, but it's a part of a process. But not only that, when they are under construction, you are reimagining what their lives can be, no matter what their lives have been. And with that being the case, it is through construction that our young people learn who they are. Because once you learn who you are, you've got the power to become everything that God divinely has designed you to become. I'll make this real plain. Last year, I was real hyped, super hyped. What was it? Over Black Panther. And so when I saw my man do Wakanda Forever, I got hyped again, had flashbacks to Black Panther. Y'all recall Black Panther, don't you? I'll help you just in case you don't. In Black Panther, you have T'Challa. T'Challa, his father has been killed, and T'Challa now must become king of Wakanda. But before he can become king of Wakanda, he has to go through a challenge. because you can't get to a throne unless you go through some challenges. You'll catch that later on. And so T'Challa gets ready for the fight, and there are no challengers until all of a sudden, here comes from the mountains M'Baku. M'Baku comes from the mountain. Here comes M'Baku. M'Baku comes down, and when M'Baku came from the mountain, he's going to fight T'Challa, challenge him for the throne to be the king of Wakanda. Y'all know what happened, don't you? M'Baku is whooping up on T'Challa. T'Challa is losing, but then all of a sudden, his mama, played by the regal Angela Bassett, says to T'Challa, show him who you are. And before you know it, everything shifted because he was reminded of who he was. And once he was reminded of who he was, y'all know what happened, don't you? He turned the tide and won the fight and became the king of Wakanda as the Black Panther. But it all went back to mama saying, show him who you are. And that's what I came to say to every mentor in this house. Every time you see one of your young mentees stepping out of line or not living a victorious life, why don't you do like mama, the mama of T'Challa, and say, show them who you are. Because when you know who you are, nobody else can tell you who you are. Well, I got one more thing to tell you. This is good right here in the final analysis. The good news is if we hustle like Nipsey, not only are the blessed to overcome, reach back and help the rest to come on over. Isn't that what Nipsey did? Nipsey could have lived in Beverly Hills or Bel Air, but he chose to erect business there in South Central Los Angeles. He chose to go back to the hood and bring good to the hood. But not only does Nipsey teach us that, but Nipsey says when you hustle, make sure that you recognize that a blueprint calls for construction. Finally, and this gets you right here. This is my own testimony. I'm about to shout, but I have to calm down so I won't run out of here shouting. And here it is right here. Once you have someone you look up to, they show you what you can look forward to. I'll do that one more time because y'all missed your shout. When you have someone that you can look up to, they give you something to look forward to. That's the testimony of Nipsey Hussle, because he looked up to Snoop Dogg. He looked up to Jay-Z, and that's where he got his business acumen from. He looked up to them, and it's only when you have someone you look up to that you then have something to look forward to. And that's what life is all about. When you wake up in the morning knowing your life counts for something and you have something to look forward to, but you only have something to look forward to when there's someone you were looking up to. Because Carter G. Woodson threw down like this by saying, one becomes what one beholds. If you see it, you can be it. And once you look up to someone, that gives you a sense of what you can become in this life. John Carlos and Tommy Smith blew the world away in 1968 at the Mexico City Olympics. And you know what they did? After their race was over, John Carlos, who came in third, Tommy Smith came in first, the 200-meter race. And you know what happened? They held up their fist, their gloved fist, symbolizing their solidarity with the Black Power movement here in this country, symbolizing with their bare feet their solidarity with those who were impoverished. But John Carlos didn't do that out of a vacuum. He did that because when he was just a little kid, growing up in Harlem, he saw Malcolm X walking up and down the streets of Harlem. And once he saw Malcolm, he's a young kid, he would race and run to catch up with Malcolm. Malcolm never hears you shout, slow down. But he made young John run to catch up. And when young John caught up with Malcolm, then Malcolm would engage him in conversation about liberation, about the power of the people. Young Malcolm did that for young John Carlos. And so in 1968, when he held that black glove fist up, it was because Malcolm X had walked with him when he was a young child. And Malcolm X, watch this, made him catch up to him. And then Malcolm dropped knowledge on him that didn't get you, so I'll testify. Here's my testimony. I won't forget September of 1975. That's the year my father died. September was also when I started my first year in high school at Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco, California. And my first day of high school, my father made his exit from earth to eternity. Needless to say, I'm tore up from the floor up. I don't feel I can get back up because my dad was my hero. My dad was my main man, but now daddy is dead at the age of 46 years old. It's jacked up. I don't understand what I'm going to do with my life. I even tried to take my life. But thank God somebody called my name when I was trying to take my life, and because they called my name, I'm still here. But that ain't even the shout. The shout is that I went to school after the funeral was over. The next day, I went to school. School had started now for a week, and I get to my literature, not my literature, but my writing composition class. And when I got to my writing composition class, taught by Miss Anderson, never will forget Miss Anderson. Miss Anderson teaching the class and said, all right, class, sit down. Here is the topic for the day. I need you to write a page essay on this topic. My daddy had just died. The funeral was the day before. Needless to say, I wasn't ready for this. And so I wrote what I could, handed it in. The next day, she gave our papers back. When she gave our papers back, she said, Mr. Haynes, come up here in front of the whole class and said, Mr. Haynes, I want you to know that you can't write. I looked at my paper, it was marked in red. I had never gotten anything less than a B+ in all my years of school leading up to that moment. And now I have a paper marked in red that says D-. She gives me the paper and it says, I'm sending you down to counselor's office because I'm putting you in a remedial writing class. And so you know I'm messed up. Daddy funeralized 2 days before. And now I'm told I'm a failure. And as a consequence, I exited that class and made my way toward the exit of the school. Miss Homer Zell Davis, a dynamic sister of Delta Sigma Theta, sees me going out and says, Frederick, where do you think you're going? I said, Miss Davis, here, gave her the paper. I can't write, is what I've been told. And so I'm leaving school. You know what Miss Davis said? She said, no, you ain't going nowhere. As a matter of fact, follow me. I said, but Miss Davis, Miss Anderson just said, I can't write. And I don't have the skills to make it in this school. She said, Frederick, it ain't that you can't write. It's that she can't teach. And because she can't teach, I'm taking you out of her class like she wants, and I'm going to put you in my class because, Frederick, I see great things in you. As a matter of fact, you're going to probably be the first African-American valedictorian in the history of Abraham Lincoln High School. I said, but Miss Davis, Miss Anderson said, she cut me off and said, are you going to listen to Miss Anderson who can't teach or Miss Davis who believes in you? I just said, you're going to be the first black valedictorian in the history of this school. And y'all, do you know what happened from that day forward? I began to do my homework like a valedictorian. I began to write my papers like a valedictorian. I began to handle business like a valedictorian. Matter of fact, I walked like a valedictorian because Miss Davis told me I was a valedictorian. June 15, 1978. Can I fast forward right quick? I led my class down down the aisle of the auditorium where graduation was taking place. I might as well let y'all know what really made me shout was the fact that the faculty had to sit, watch this, on the first 3 rows in this section right here as we came down the front aisle, as we came down the middle aisle. And of course they sat in alphabetical order. Guess who was sitting right here? Miss Anderson. And when Miss Anderson saw me, I walked right by her. I pulled a cool D and said, how do you like me now? Not bad for a brother that cannot write. All I'm trying to say, Miss Davis mentored me from giving up to stepping up. Miss Davis believed in me, and because she believed in me, I went from victim to valedictorian. And that's all I'm saying to all of my young black brothers in the house today. Nipsey Hussle is saying to each every one of you, I guess I gotta close with Nipsey, don't you? Because Nipsey had a song, and in the song he said, this ain't entertainment, it's for my people on them slave ships. These songs, just the spirituals I swam against them waves with, ended up on shore to their amazement. Peace, I'm out of here. End up on shore to their amazement. Swim against the waves if you have to. But as you swim against the waves, just recognize if God above you is within you, you can handle anything that may come at you. Peace.